Natürlich. So. Okay. English, huh? Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. So today, okay, wait. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 So, because I can't ever remember what verses I've spoken on or not, I just decided to give myself a system, and I am going to start with the key verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So, according to the Bhakti Shastri course that we have, there's a course that you can study Prabhupada's main books, including the Bhagavad Gita, and according to that course, there are in every chapter there are verses that kind of summarize the essence of the chapter. Sorry, it's a little bit difficult speaking and being responsible for the technology. Anyway, all right. So today we are actually starting with the first chapter, first verse. So this is actually the only verse that is important. Not important, but it's the only key verse in this chapter. So. 1-1, ja. Okay. Yep. Und ich werde dann später auch den allerletzten Vers von Kapitel 1 lesen. Also das erste und das letzte. Aber das kommt später. Alright. So. Dhritarashtra uvacha. You don't have to, or you don't, if you have, you can chant, but okay. Dharma kshetre kurukshetre. Samaveta yuyutsava. Mamaka pandavaschaiva. Kim akurvata Sanjaya. Sehr gut. Okay. So, the translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Ja. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? In the purport, it says, I'm not going to read the whole one, but just a part. So, Bhagavad Gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, the glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read the Bhagavad Gita scrutinizingly, or very scrutinizingly, with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna, and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of the Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Okay, dann das dritte Absatz. The word Dharma Kshetre, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of younger brother Pandu were assembled in the field of Kurukshetra with the determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want to compromise between the cousins and the brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyas, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Okay. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasachare Shatarine Vanchakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrindam Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is a very, very important verse because it shows us the worst kind of mindset that people in the material world can have. So, to start off with, I heard this analogy from Keshava Maharaj, so that's what I'm going to use. If we think about our alarm clocks that go off in the morning, there are three kinds of people or three kinds of reactions that you can have to your alarm clock. So now I'm going to ask you if you can guess what those reactions are. Or let me ask you, what do you do when your alarm clock goes off in the morning? How do you react to it? Yeah. Yeah. He switches it off and he goes back to bed. Who else? Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So and the third person, I had okay. So this wasn't actually an alarm clock, but it was a fire drill alarm. I had a roommate at university, and usually for some reason they practiced the fire drill in the middle of the night, so that you had to wake up. So this alarm clock will go off, and then you would have to practice getting out of the hostel very quickly. She did not even wake up. This thing was ear splitting, but she didn't wake up. So those three are the three examples of people that, and not to say that any one of you is worse or better than the other, but on a philosophical level, we can see that if Krishna calls, that's like an alarm clock, and we have different reactions to Krishna's call in different parts of our lives. So there are people who get who have the opportunity to know more about Krishna, but they just, or they don't even see it. So, or there are people who show interest, they wake up and then they think, oh, no, go back to bed. And I'm, unfortunately, sometimes I also don't like my alarm clock. And then there are those of us who hear the call, and it's not easy, especially in winter, or at least not in Germany. It's not so bad getting out of bed in winter because you have heating. But I remember in South Africa, it was very difficult to get up in the winter because it was so cold, because the houses weren't heated. So it's difficult, but you get up and then you take a warm shower and you get dressed and then it's okay. So we can see that in this in this first verse and in the next verses, Duryodhana comes up. We have Dhritarashtra, we have Duryodhana, and we have Arjuna. So who can tell me something about? We read something about Dhritarashtra, but someone give me a summary of who is Dhritarashtra and what's wrong with him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, Dhritarashtra is the brother of the father of the Pandavas.
So their uncle, yeah.
Yeah, so their uncle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he is blind by birth,
Mm-hmm.
and he is not only blind but also described as spiritually blind.
Okay, very good. So Dhritarashtra was actually the eldest son. So by law, he should have been king. But because he was blind, he was disqualified. Because in those days, kings did not sit in the office or in some kind of bunker where they were kept safe. They went out to battle with their soldiers. So if you are blind, you cannot do that. And that's why his second brother, the middle brother, Pandu, became king. Because the third brother was actually born from a maidservant, so he was their brother, but because his mother wasn't a queen, he could also not rule. So Pandu was the only one that could become king according to the law and everything else. And it's very important what you said, Dhritarashtra was also spiritually blind. Because it's kind of, just think about it. Just this one thing that disqualifies you from being king. And his younger brother died very young, so there was no one else. So he did become king. So he had a lot of help, but he never went to war. His sons and everything did the fighting for him. But he kind of got a taste of what it was to be king and to be in power and to have all this, all this power. And he did not want to give it up. So in the Mahabharata, the story that kind of leads up to the Bhagavad Gita, we know that there were a lot of discussions and about getting to this war. So Dhritarashtra also had a son called Duryodhana. And he was even worse than his father because he actually could see, but he was even more spiritually blind. Because in the Mahabharata, we realize or we see that there were moments where Dhritarashtra thought, no, this is not good. But Duryodhana, not once, not a single time did he ever think about doing the right thing. He just wanted what he wanted. So these two people represent the first two people with the alarm clock. So Dhritarashtra, you could say he's the one that who woke up a few times, but he pressed snooze. He went back to sleep. Duryodhana never even heard the alarm clock. He was just fixed on he wanted his way, and he never paid attention to Krishna or anybody else. But Arjuna was the one who got up. He heard the alarm clock and he got up. But as was here, such as in life, it's not easy. So sometimes as devotees, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get a little bit stressed because the ideals are so high. We hear about all these perfect devotees who have absolute trust in Krishna, and they just don't think about anything else. And then I think about myself, and yeah, I struggle. So we can see that from this first verse, we know that Dhritarashtra was very nervous because the battlefield was on a holy place. So he knew that because the Pandavas were very righteous, they always followed Krishna. They loved him, they had complete faith in him, and they always followed him. Even though they were put in really, 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 really difficult situations. They had absolute faith, and therefore they will they were going to be more fortunate because number one, they had complete faith in Krishna, and number two, Krishna was actually there. So if we put this in our own life, if we take this situation and we just look at what it looks like in our own life, we can see that the material world is also like a battlefield. We have to fight with we have to fight against our own tendency to go to sleep. We don't want to do the things. We just want to stay in bed and just comfortable and warm and snug. Or we have to fight against people who want to hurt us. And sometimes those people are actually from our own family. Like in this case, these two groups were actually cousins. And it's not easy. So, and Krishna actually never promises it's easy. There's one time a disciple spoke to Srila Prabhupada about it. And Prabhupada said, no, I never, because they were talking about book distribution. And he was saying, oh, Prabhupada, it's so hard to go on books. People are so rude and they treat us so bad and whatever. Prabhupada said, I didn't say it was going to be easy. I said it was simple. Simple and easy are not the same thing. So, but Krishna also makes a promise, and he says that if you have faith in me, you will never be vanquished. Now, he didn't speak about our bodies, but he spoke about our faith and he spoke about our souls. And in the end, it may not happen in this life, but it may happen in another life, that the devotee will always win. The devotee always wins. No matter how the material situation looks, it may look like that you lose materially, but if you stick to the rules that Krishna gives you, then you always win because you have a spiritual goal. So someone may cheat you like this. The Kauravas tried to cheat the Pandavas out of their kingdom. They tried to burn them, they tried to poison them, they gambled and they stole their kingdom. So materially speaking, the Pandavas were not having such a good time. They were suffering. They were suffering like I don't think a lot of people can imagine that they suffered. But in the end, they won because they stayed true to Krishna. they followed his instructions and his rules. And yes, they got their kingdom back. But sometimes it happens in life that in some of our battles we don't win materially. So sometimes we do great service and we don't get the recognition from other people that actually we should get if they were treating us right. But if we stay humble and if we think, okay, yeah, okay, not nice, I didn't get the recognition, or I I something bad happened, but I'm going to trust that Krishna is in control, because we don't always get what we want. And sometimes, like we see with Arjuna, Krishna gives us a really, really difficult task, and we don't know how we're going to do it. We get scared, we get nervous. And this whole Bhagavad Gita is basically Arjuna showing us how we can react to different situations. We can't pretend that it's not difficult. Our life, in different times of our lives, we always have difficult things to face. But it's not that Arjuna didn't pretend that it was difficult. He was very, very aware of the battle was going to be very difficult. He had to basically kill half of his family. But he took shelter of someone who could show him what to do. So in the very first second line of the purport, it says that there it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna, and to try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. So Arjuna basically shows us that you have to have help. You have to take some spiritual shelter from someone. And that's why a spiritual master is the most essential thing that as a person who's serious about spiritual life, to take a spiritual master is very important. Now, it doesn't mean that you directly have to get initiated and everything, but for us in the Hare Krishna movement, our first guru is always Srila Prabhupada. And to read his books and to do what he says in his books is taking shelter of him. So Arjuna showed us that even a pure devotee can sometimes think, oh, Krishna, what do you want? What are you doing? Like, why? Why are you giving me such a difficult thing to do? So we can feel a little bit nervous sometimes, but then we always have to take shelter of Krishna. And then the last verse of this chapter, Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. So Arjuna said, but Krishna, how can I kill my whole family? How can I do this difficult thing? It's going to ruin my relationships. It's going to ruin Dharma. The women are going to be unprotected. There's going to be a whole bunch of children that are born without the proper sacrifices and everything, and things are just going to go downhill. And later on, we see how Krishna answers him. But what I want to say today is that sometimes we are the people who just don't hear Krishna, but sometimes we hear the alarm call and then we choose to go back to sleep. But sometimes we are the people who wake up. So our spiritual life and bhakti yoga is actually the process of getting up in the morning, spiritually speaking. So our japa, our reading, coming to temple, doing kirtan, everything, that's just a way for us to wake up spiritually and just wake up spiritually, take a spiritual shower, and then get on with your day. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight was that it's very important for us to take shelter from a spiritual master, to take shelter from Srila Prabhupada. But it also doesn't mean that we can't ask difficult questions. So because Arjuna asks difficult questions, he doesn't just lightly, he doesn't follow Krishna blindly. He has a conversation with him, and in the end, because of that conversation, he gains faith because Krishna explains everything to him in a very proper way. So, but then in the end, Arjuna asks all these questions and he doesn't follow blindly, but in the end, he also then accepts what Krishna tells him. So, as devotees or as spiritual people who want to follow a spiritual path, no matter what spiritual path it is important to read scrutinizingly. Scrutinizing means that you read very carefully and you ask questions and you find out if you have doubts, and it's very important then to ask someone who you can see already went through what you are going through now. Okay, so and then in the rest of the Bhagavad Gita, in the rest of the chapters, then the key verses highlight some of the things that Krishna teaches Arjuna. But yeah, so in the next key verse is in chapter 2. All right, I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions or any comments or any experiences that you want to share? You can do it in German or in English. I can.
If you want to read from the end of
Yeah, I did. It was the last verse. The last verse is purport, but that's actually good. So the last verse says, Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. The purport says, while observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. So that's maybe an important point to mention, is that in this day and age, the characteristics of being tough and direct and no nonsense are glorified, and the characteristics of being humble and soft-hearted and merciful, not so much. It's maybe seen these days, it's seen sort of as weakness. Another thing that I wanted to mention but I forgot is that we have to imagine that this is a battlefield. The armies on both sides, they already blew their conches. The battle is about to start. And then Arjuna has this crisis of faith. And he takes the time to listen to Krishna. So sometimes when I know from myself, when I get stressed, I just kind of think, oh, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this, and I don't have time to stop. And sometimes the other day, Gojum physically had to chase me out of the kitchen. He says, just get out and let me clean the kitchen and go to sleep or something. Because I was so stressed because I had to do this and this and this. I didn't take time to just think and sleep and take care. So Arjuna is doing this. He's taking time in the middle of a battle to just find out, okay, I'm a bit confused, I'm stressed, I'm scared, to listen to Krishna. So that is what we do. That is what our sadhana is. That is what our sadhana is every day. Our spiritual practice is a moment for us just to take a breath and to gain courage and then to fight the battle of everyday life. So that is also what we need to remember, is to not neglect our spiritual life because the material things are so important and we have to do this and this and this and this. It's very important to prioritize your spiritual practice about reading, chanting, listening to lectures. So the fact that you are all here, this is you just taking a break. And then afterwards, then we have the power, we have the strength again to to carry on. So thanks for mentioning that. I forgot to say that. Okay, anything else? Okay. Yeah.
Is there any prerequisite for actually having the proper mindset that one just gets up?
You're asking how can we make it easy for ourselves to get up in the morning?
Yeah, because you know we don't want to snooze and we don't want to just miss the opportunity. You know.
Well, if you so basically all of us are starting out so we are in Kali Yuga, so we're basically all started out as Duryodhana because that's why we're here. That's why we're not back in the spiritual world with Krishna. We're here. So we all started out as Duryodhana. But how can we make it easy for ourselves to get up in the morning or to wake up is just it's a lot of mercy that comes from people, from other people. That's why mercy is something that you get without really deserving it. So that's why it's so important for us as the people who already got the mercy have to share the mercy in some way. You have to give people prasadam, you have to tell them about Krishna, or you have to give them a Bhagavad Gita or just another book or something. We have to share the mercy because that's the alarm clock that people hear. We at least have to give people the chance to get up in the morning. But if we don't switch the alarm clock on so that it rings, then people will just go on sleeping. So that's the one thing. Other thing is just steadily doing what you can every day. Is Karamakanana Swami, before he left his body, he gave a one last speech, and it's on YouTube. You can find it. And he said that his last message was just stay on the path. Just stay on the path. Just read and do your japa and follow the regulative principles. Then it's sure that you will reach the goal. So steadily doing our sadhana, and quite honestly, sometimes it's not always the same because sometimes we struggle. But the point is, if you have, for instance, difficulty chanting in the morning, then you can't just think, oh, it's difficult, I can't do it. You can't give it up. So maybe you can't chant 16 rounds, but then chant 12 or chant 8 or chant at least one, but just don't give it up. And so that's like steadily doing your japa is like going to bed early. That's the point, is if you can't get up early in the morning, if you've had a terrible night before, that doesn't work. That makes it extremely difficult. So Prabhupada gave us 4 regulative principles of not eating meat, fish, or eggs, or not intoxicating ourselves, or not gambling, and not illicit sex. So those are the things that make it difficult for us to hear Krishna. So if those are the things that we do every day, then we're not going to wake up. We're not going to hear the alarm clock, because those are the things that kind of just put you in a deep sleep. And that's why Prabhupada says, stay away from there, because those are the dangerous places. So that's why the regulative principles are there. But and hang out with people that. So I didn't listen to the whole video, but there's a video on YouTube that says there are 5 sorts of people that you have to take advice from, and the rest don't matter. And the one of them is, you have to take advice from someone who is an example. So if you want to reach something, if you want to be like someone, then you have to ask advice from someone who actually already did what you are trying to do now. You're not going to ask advice from someone who, so for instance, someone who's been to a country that you've never been to, but you want to go there, you're going to ask that person for advice, or internet, but it's always good to have personal advice from someone. You're not going to ask someone who's never been to that country, because what are they going to tell you? They don't know. So you ask someone who is an example of you, for you. And that's kind of what makes it easy to get up in the morning, is just to hang out with the people who get up early in the morning, and to stay away from the things that make us sleep. Does that answer your question? How would you have answered the question?
If I had the answer, I wouldn't have asked.
No, well, sometimes we have an idea of what the answer could be, but we still ask.
No, I think like there is some kind of motivation. Like if I have to go to a job or I have an airplane or something, there's no question of not getting up. Because there's like an urgency. But maybe on other days there's not that urgency, and I kind of like, okay, I can sleep a bit longer. So the idea of getting this spiritual urgency, that I would like to know.
Yeah, it's always easier getting up if you have somewhere to go. Okay, I'll tell you what helps me, and then you can generalize. You can take the parts that work for you. What helps me is exactly that: is create a reason to get up in the morning. For instance, it doesn't always work, but if I know that I have to get up because I promised someone else that we would go, for instance, if you have a friend and you say, okay, let's just read one verse every morning. So you do it online. I had a friend that I did this with, but it sort of fizzled out. But the point is that if you have a friend that you promised to do something with, then it's sort of motivating, because it's not just for you, but you promised to help someone, or you promised to do them to help them with something or some. You Yeah, yes, but yeah. So it's like you promise Krishna to do it, but sometimes it helps us to have another, like someone closer. It it helps me to have someone else that can hold me accountable until I gain the strength to do it by myself. But the point is that we can't actually, in this day and age, we think that we can do everything by ourselves and we don't need anybody, but that's total nonsense. So the point is that we always need someone. We always need to help. We can't do it by ourselves. So that's why community is so important. And yeah, it helps if you have someone with you that that is trying to reach the same goal, because then you're not alone and it's not all on you. It's someone that can help to support you, and that helps us to get up in the morning. Yeah, but just don't give your brain any reason. Yeah, that's something that I still have to work on, is just not thinking about it. Just don't think about snoozing. Just, it shouldn't be an option. But sometimes it's not so easy. Anyway, okay. Thank you very much. Now we're going to get up, clear everything away, and sing and offer a lamp to Krishna, and then have prasad. Grantara Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Prabhupada.